If it continues to scale and adopt at the same speed of the last 10 years, there's no reason why this can't be a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 asset. If gold's at $16 trillion, Bitcoin's at $1.5 trillion. Could Bitcoin 10x in the next 15 years? I believe it can, and I believe it has the properties, the technical properties, to allow it to do that, and we're already seeing that happen.
Welcome to our channel. Anthony Scaramucci begins by highlighting the significant steps Wall Street has taken towards embracing Bitcoin. He mentions that major financial institutions have filed for Bitcoin ETF, viewing them as a potential store of value comparable to gold. This institutional interest underscores the growing acceptance of Bitcoin, despite its current nascent status with only 5% adoption in the United States. Scaramucci posits that if Bitcoin continues to grow at the same pace it has over the past decade, it could become a $345,000 to $100,000 asset. Scaramucci provides a comparison to gold, noting that while gold has a market capitalization of $16 trillion, Bitcoin stands at approximately $1.5 trillion. He believes that Bitcoin has the technical properties to significantly increase in value, potentially 10x in the next 15 years. This optimism is rooted in Bitcoin's unique attributes and the ongoing developments in its infrastructure and acceptance. Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
And Wall Street's figured this out. They filed for these ETFs. And they're selling these ETFs as a potential additional store of value akin to gold. And so, yes, this is a nascent asset. It only has 5% adoption in the United States. If it continues to scale and adopt at the same speed of the last 10 years, there's no reason why this can't be a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 asset. And so putting into the context for your listeners and viewers, if gold's at $16 trillion, Bitcoin's at $1.5 trillion, could Bitcoin 10x in the next 15 years? I believe it can, and I believe it has the properties, the technical properties, to allow it to do that, and we're already seeing that happen. It's already manifesting in that direction. Right now, Bitcoin is still tracking like a technology asset. It's tracking NVIDIA. It's tracking what we've typically been calling the Magnificent Seven or the Super Six, these tech stocks like Amazon, Google, NVIDIA, Facebook, Apple, that sort of thing. And so, yes, it's tracking that for right now. It hasn't fully matured. Once it fully matures, it'll start to have correlated properties of gold. But yeah, you cut rates, you're going to expand the breadth of equity leadership in the markets. If a rate cut goes into place, you'll certainly provide some relief in the real estate market, especially here in the United States. And I have maintained that you're going to see at least 3 rate cuts from the Fed this year. There was about a 2-month period of time where Wall Street is now saying little to no rate cuts, lots of jawboning and moral suasion from the Fed in terms of what their inclinations are. But I don't really think they have a choice. So they'll cut rates. They don't want the economy to overly weaken. They're staring down the barrel of huge interest rate expenses here in the United States for U.S. debt. And inflation numbers are trending down. I would recommend to your people to please go to Trueflation, which is a website that aggregates the data for inflation. It's a decentralized data aggregator, and it's getting this data outside the traditional metrics used by the CPI. We think it's a way more accurate way to get the data. And they're saying that inflation right now, core inflation in the United States, is about 2.2%. The Fed is saying it's about 90 basis points higher than that. And if we're right and true inflation is right, they don't want to be too far behind the curve. And so I think you'll get successive rate cuts, probably starting in August, of 25 basis points apiece going into the election. If you go to Google and you look up how many people in the United States own crypto, there's different numbers up there. Some are saying 50 million, some are saying 90 million, but let's just say it's 80 million. 65 million people, David, own dogs in the United States. So if you're how can I say this? If you're there, and you see it, you don't want to miss it. And so if you've got 80 million people owning it, let's say 1% of them is 800,000 of them, and they're in the following swing states: Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, etc. What are you going to do, David? You're going to lose the election. So I think the Biden team, they vetoed this bill last week, but they did get the Ethereum stuff passed despite Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler not wanting it. So I think they're going to pivot. They just pivoted on the border. They just signed executive orders to stop the flow of people and traffic at the border. And I think they're going to pivot now on Bitcoin and crypto assets. I don't think Biden, who is a moderate, I don't think he wants to be left out in the dark on this. I mean, you don't want to lose it. I mean, this is a razor-thin election, and I don't think Joe Biden wants to lose this election because of the capricious whims of Elizabeth Warren or Gary Gensler. I remember the Winklevoss was making a presentation to me in 2014 that I disregarded, but there I was in 2017, and I said, okay, I am missing this. I need to do some homework. And so when that apple hit me in the head, I had to get comfortable that I could store it. I had to get comfortable with the regulations, and I had to get comfortable with the fact that Bitcoin was scaling. And so I put a little checklist together. I said, if Bitcoin gets close to 100 million wallets, I know I can store it safely at Fidelity. It's deemed as property in the United States. And so, not to bore everybody, but once the IRS said Bitcoin was property, it was almost impossible for the czar and the czarina, Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler, to take your property away. The U.S. doesn't like that. So it got to 80 million wallets. We started making our purchases. We looked brilliant in 2021. I had clients telling me, you're bringing me into the future. We looked absolutely stupid. I think it was probably the worst year of my career, 2022. I had clients telling me I was an imbecile and I was buying a decentralized pet rock, to quote Jamie Dimon. Now we're sitting here in the middle of 2024, and anybody that stayed with us, of course, has been very big time rewarded.
Scaramucci recounts how he initially dismissed the cryptocurrency in 2014, but later recognized its potential in 2017. He outlines the criteria he used to evaluate Bitcoin's viability, including the number of wallets and regulatory clarity. His firm, SkyBridge Capital, began investing in Bitcoin as it reached 80 million wallets, a decision that proved to be highly rewarding for those who stayed invested through the market's ups and downs. Scaramucci compares his investment approach to that of Michael Saylor, CEO of MicroStrategy, who is heavily invested in Bitcoin. While Saylor is all in on Bitcoin, Scaramucci has allocated about 25% of SkyBridge's assets to Bitcoin, which has grown to approximately 40% due to Bitcoin's price appreciation. He explains that this growth in Bitcoin's share of their portfolio is not due to additional investments, but rather its outperformance compared to other assets.
Well, I mean, that would be a huge compliment to be compared to Michael, because he's a genius and he was 3 months ahead of me with his first Bitcoin buy. I think he bought Bitcoin late May of 2020. We bought our first Bitcoins in September, October, November. And I think he's a brilliant guy. I have probably more of a traditional investment style than Michael. Michael is all in one asset, Bitcoin. I put about 25% of our assets into Bitcoin, and it's grown. We're probably now at about 40. And again, it's not like we added any more money, David. It's just that the price of the asset's going up, and you sort of have the pizza slice expanding on the pie. If Bitcoin triples from here and I don't sell any, as an example, it's going to be 60% of our assets, and it won't be because we sold any of the other assets. It'll just because Bitcoin's outperforming all the other assets in our portfolio. But listen, I mean, I'm not allowed to talk about my performance, but I would say this to you. Bitcoin is up 160%, and 40% of my assets are in Bitcoin. So we're having a pretty good run at SkyBridge. I don't mince words, as you know. I try to talk to people very straight. I just think there's room for both. I understand why people own gold. I understand the 5,000-year human commitment to gold, but it's just not as user-friendly. It's not as transportable as Bitcoin. And, you know, I'll say this to you. How can I, you know, I mean, it's a little graphic, but I'll share it with you. I was in Saudi Arabia, and one of the sheikhs came over to see me, and they said, "Oh, Anthony, I saw you on TV, and you were saying that Bitcoin is like digital gold." And I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Oh, well, let me tell you something. It's better than gold. And let me tell you why." He says, "Right now, I'm in good graces with the crown prince and the king. There's no bone saw in my future." He said, "But if there should come a day where I'm in bad graces with these people, I have $300 million on a USB, and I can put that somewhere on my body or stick it where the sun doesn't shine and cross the Yemeni border or get out of here on a boat with my money." You can't do that with gold. Make sure you tell people that on television. So I can't tell people that on television. It's too graphic, but I can tell it to David Lynn on your show. Well, I mean, listen, there's no question Trump is going to have a more inflationary policy because he's talking about things. If you read Project 2025 or you read the Trump economic plan, you're talking about 20-ish% increase in tariffs in certain spots in the economy, 20% full-on tariffs with the Chinese. That's going to raise prices for the average consumer. Disposable income will get hit. We're talking about almost $2,000 per capita with a Trump tariff increase, and so that's inflationary. He's also, and this is a big problem with both of these candidates, frankly, they also like to spend a lot of money. Trump spent $7.8 trillion in deficit spending. Joe Biden over $8 trillion in deficit spending. They both have said that they will not discuss under any circumstances the entitlement issues or any type of proposal to curb spending or curb the deficit. So there's more inflation with Trump. But having said that, this is something I'm a big believer in and why I think there'll be 3 rate cuts. You've got AI productivity gains, and you've got a recoupling of the supply chain with Asia. And so manufacturing's back. And manufacturing is back in spades. Increased supply will lead to lower prices. And I think that that's the natural consequence of all the technology in the marketplace now. So I think the Red cuts rate, I don't think they get back to the 0% interest rates unless we have some kind of global calamity. But I think they get back to a couple hundred basis points below where we are now.
Scaramucci acknowledges the long-standing human affinity for gold, but argues that Bitcoin is more user-friendly and transportable. He shares a compelling anecdote from a Saudi Arabian sheikh who highlighted Bitcoin's advantages in terms of security and mobility compared to gold, underscoring Bitcoin's unique value proposition. Scaramucci discusses the economic policies of former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden, highlighting their implications for inflation and the broader economy. He anticipates that Trump's policies, if re-elected, would be more inflationary due to increased tariffs and spending. However, he also believes that advancements in technology and AI, along with a reconfiguration of the supply chain, will ultimately lead to lower prices and improved economic productivity. Please like and subscribe my channel.